So framing and receiving has always been a thing in catching.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
always trying to make borderline pitches look like strikes. What's going on, guys? Coach Matt at YouGoProBaseball.com here again with the man, Kyle Schmidt, current professional catcher in the Twins organization. He's got some great tips for you today, and I really want to pick his brain in this video on the whole one knee down stuff. We're going to cover everything in the stance, but I really want to dive into the whole one knee down, where it came from, why you're doing it, how it's beneficial, all that good stuff. Before we get into it, you got to check out at KGS Baseball on Instagram. That's Kyle's page. Really great information on there, as well as KGSBaseball.com. A lot of great stuff over there, so go check it out. Now, tell me, let's talk about the stance. What are you guys doing in pro baseball? Just tell me the whole thing.
All right, so, right now in pro baseball, what the shift that you're seeing, and something we touched on in the video that we did a few months ago, was moving from our traditional setup, where we're on 2 feet and we may be in our primary position, in our secondary position, ready to go, to a one knee stance. And so you've seen this a little bit in professional baseball and amateur baseball in years past. However, it's a little bit more widely used now. And so you're starting to see more and more guys in the big leagues, guys in high school and college baseball, and guys even in youth baseball start to adapt to this style. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about, from my point of view, what I've felt and also what I think the reasoning is behind this position, why we do it, and then also how we get into those stances and the different variations from there. Okay, so first things first, I want to talk about our traditional 2 feet setup. So if you're still in that setup and you're not comfortable working on one knee, that's okay. Whenever we do get into our setup, the first thing that I like to tell guys, and that I've thought my whole life too, is that we want to be nice and comfortable. So comfort behind the dish is going to allow us to do so much whenever we're talking about receiving the baseball, whenever we're talking about getting down to block, getting up to throw. You've got to be comfortable. This next thing that I like to think is that I've got to be balanced too. And not just balanced in a sense of like, all right, cool, I'm balanced through the ground, but I actually want to be connected to that ground. Make sure that I'm not going to be able, whenever I move inside, whenever I move outside, to get out of that balance, fall forward, fall back, too far up on my toes, too far back in my heels. So when we're talking about balance, if I'm in a setup to where I'm too far on my toes, and John's going to show you here what I mean, he's just going to tap me. Whenever I do that, I'm going to fall back. If I'm up on my toes, you can go ahead and do that again. I don't have that same stability and that connection to the ground. If I'm through my feet, now whenever he taps me, I'm in a lot more stable position. Same thing when I'm up in my secondary. If I'm grounded and I'm connected to the ground, I'm good to go. And so we move from our 2 feet stance now into a one knee stance while we're back behind the dish working. And we still want to have those same feelings. We want to be balanced. We want to be connected. We want to be comfortable. If we move into that, and I guess first we'll talk about the reason why we do it. Whenever we have a knee on the ground. So per my understanding, what I've seen and listening to guys talk and hearing some other things that have gone on, talking about that transition, we basically eliminate some sort of reference point for the umpire. So when we're talking about being on 2 feet, if our glove is out in front of us and that umpire is slotted behind us over our left shoulder, let's say with a right-handed hitter, and that glove dips below the ball and then works back up, he's got that reference to be able to use to make a judgment call in the moment with that pitch coming in, whether it's 70 miles an hour, whether it's 100 miles an hour. If we drop that knee down, now I free all this space to be able to work with my glove while still being grounded, still being comfortable, still being quiet with our body as we want to do as catchers, and maybe get that extra borderline pitch on the bottom, the inside, the top, the outside, because we're effectively eliminating that part of the setup and the umpire is not able to see it as effectively.
I've never umpired before, but that was just a totally different look for me. It makes it look so much better from this perspective.
That whole left side's opened up for you, right? So we're in here and I can work that glove a little bit further than I could if I'm set up on 2 feet. So if I get rid of that knee again, I would imagine that probably looks a little bit closer to being in that zone.
It does, it does. It has a totally different look. It almost looks like you're way outside of your body with 2 feet up, two knees up. And then when your knee is down, it's almost like the same distance you were away from your body. It just had a better look to it.
Yeah, and for me, like I said, I've caught for 15, 16 years on 2 feet. Once I made this transition, at the end of a game, I was so much more energized. I wasn't as exhausted because I was on a knee. I wasn't having to be stable, be athletic for as long. and I could still do the same things. And so I felt a lot better after I got done playing. Also, whenever I was playing, I felt like I was getting better calls, I was getting more calls, and I was also catching the ball more cleanly and fluidly every time, which is what we want. Like we talked about in that last video, we want to focus on that pocket. For me, I'm able to get so much more in my pocket on that baseball because everything feels more free whenever I'm down. I know like Tyler Flowers talks about he's 6'5", 6'4", 6'5", and for him, he goes down to a knee because he feels like he can get low to the ground, and then he combines that with his glove movement to be able to get those pitches at the bottom of the zone. So I think it's a really good tool for guys to use. That said, whenever I am talking about one knee setups, whenever I kind of work with my guys on this, the way that I present it to them is just as a tool. It's a tool that you can use whenever you feel like you need to. So if you don't feel comfortable working with runners on off of a knee, there's nobody on and we're not in a blocking position, and you want to try to get that extra strike down at the bottom of the zone, and you feel like you can get that pitch and work it back up to a strike in that knee down position, go for it. It's just a tool that you can add to your kit to be able to make you a better player or be able to add something else to your game.
Let me ask you this, when are you switching from like right knee down to left knee down? And then how does the whole blocking technique work from your knees?
Gotcha, so that's a great question. So whenever I'm set up, I'm in my sign giving stance right now. Let's say the pitcher's looking at me, looking in for that sign. So I'm still gonna give him that sign. Let's say we go fastball outside to a righty. I stay righty here because I want you to notice I'm gonna put my left knee down. So whenever let's say nobody's on base, whenever we're getting into our setup, and we've got a righty in the box, typically we're probably gonna wanna go left knee down because that umpire is gonna be slotted back over my left shoulder. And so if we've got a hitter here and then this knee down and we're working back towards the plate, back onto the plate with our glove and our body as we get set up, it's gonna free up all that space to be able to work. So if we go fastball outside here, I would imagine this is clear for you. You can see that lane, and then we can work back through that ball and give you that presentation. With a left-handed hitter in the box, I like to go right knee down. And this is still with nobody on here. But left-handed hitter in the box, umpire's gonna slot in between us and the hitter. I like to go right knee down. And so there's different setups that we can talk about whenever we are going knee down. There's not just one setup for everybody. And that's tying back into 2 feet too. There's not one setup that's gonna make you an advanced catcher. There's not one setup that's gonna help you grow in your career as a catcher behind the plate. Everybody's a little bit different, and that's going back to that mobility video that we talked about, where everybody has their different ranges of motion. Everybody has different limitations on what they can do. And so for you, you've gotta find what setup is gonna help you do what you wanna do on the field, whether we're talking about receiving, blocking, or throwing. So a couple variations of this knee down setup. So I know John mentioned LKD, RKD, OKD. What you saw me do earlier was just a standard, I'm gonna put my knee down here. Now, if you notice what I did with my right knee down is I made sure that this left knee was clear, so that way I didn't catch my elbow as I'm working back and forth to the ball or up and down to the ball. I wanna make sure that with this setup, this doesn't get in the way. So if I'm expecting a pitch here or here, let's say an off-speed pitch down and away, and it backs up or a pitcher misses with that fastball spot, I don't get caught, and now I can't get back to catch that ball. Or even if I do catch it, it's not gonna be caught cleanly like we want. So what you saw me do there is I just opened up that hip a little bit, and now my posture's a little bit lower, glove's a little bit further out in front. I'm still not extended, but my glove's a little bit further out in front, and now I can work everywhere that I want to around the plate, and I'm not restricted. Same thing with my left knee down. The position that I'm gonna get into here lets me work wherever I want to with the glove, but I'm still balanced, I'm still centered, and I'm still ready to go. So whenever we go from our standard knee down setups into a little bit different variation, from here, we can go over the top of our knee. I think like Yadier Molina does some variation of that where it's a little bit more over the knee here. We can go into a kickstand to where you're a little bit wider and you sit into those hips, and then you still give your target and work through into your presentation. Do a little bit of a modified version between those two, where we're not as far out, we're also not close, we're somewhere in between here where we can get set up and we're still ready to go. I think something that's important to note too, like even from this position, I can still get up to my feet, no problem to be able to throw. And I know John asked about blocking. From there, I can still get down and block that center pitch. I can still move to my left. I can still push to my right to get over there. So just making sure that the setups we put ourselves in do not limit what we can do. And that's something that you need to find out for yourself, because that's what's gonna make you a better baseball player.
Two things that stand out to me while you were talking about that. Number one, as a former professional pitcher, I used to love the catchers that could get real low, like present a low target. That was huge for me, especially being a sinker guy. Not only being low was a good visual for me, but it was easier for them to get that low pitch and frame it as a strike. So framing and receiving has always been a thing in catching. We're always trying to make borderline pitches look like strikes. Just now the one knee technique has come into play. The other thing that kind of stood out when you were talking was, and this is a question, I don't know, maybe this is some of the controversy in this setup, is wouldn't the, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, wouldn't the, because I like this whole thing, wouldn't the batter or the other team maybe have an idea of what's coming from the pitcher, setting up one way versus the other?
Gotcha. So that's a really good question. For me, whenever I'm back there, like every time we're playing this game, the overall game that's going on, but it's also the little games that you're playing between yourself and the other team, yourself and the dugout, yourself and the pitcher whenever you're in the box. And so for me, whenever I'm on 2 feet, I'm gonna give my sign. Let's say we're giving a fastball outside again. And then I'm gonna set up, I may flash my target. And then as that pitcher gets ready to start his delivery, I'm gonna bounce into position. So the same thing happens whenever we're on a knee. So I may give my sign, we go fastball outside. I may drop that knee and just kind of get set up, flash that target, but then whenever he's getting ready to deliver that ball, and it's gonna be late rather than early, that's where we may move a little bit and get into our position, but we're still set up and ready to go as that ball's on the way. So I think a lot of the trouble that you see too, I know this is a different topic, but a lot of the trouble that you see with especially like high school guys that may not understand the little complexities of what they're doing back there. And that's, you know, that's high school, that's college, that's pro ball too. That's with me in my own career, trying to figure that out on my own. But that setup happens too late. And so if we're expecting a pitch to be here and we're moving as it's on the way, and then we're getting settled this way and that ball goes that way, we're gonna struggle to be able to get to it. So I think you're playing devil's advocate with like picking locations from the dugout or as a hitter. And I think the answer to that would be, we just need to set up a little bit later. So nothing changes there from our normal procedure whenever we are getting into our setup. If we're gonna bounce from just this position into a secondary, it's late. If we're gonna bounce from our sign giving position into a one knee, it's late as well, getting into that setup.
Now, the guys that you're working with pro guys, college guys, high school guys. At what age do you find like this is a good technique to start implementing?
Gotcha.
Like, can you get an 8-year-old to start doing this if he's capable, or are you waiting until they're, you know, middle school age? Like what's your feel on the whole age thing?
So I think that the way that I phrase it to them, so let's say we have a 10-year-old kid that comes in and he's like, hey, why are you on a knee? Why are you doing this? I'll tell him like, hey, this is what we're doing in pro ball. I think that it works. I think, you know, here's X, Y, and Z, why we get those calls, why the setup's better for me. However, for you, I want you to do what's comfortable. And I want you to do what's comfortable, but also allows you to be able to keep everything in front, throw every runner out, and catch every ball that comes to the plate. So I think we don't want to vary too much from those fundamental things of catching. Like, hey, our name's catcher, right? We've got to catch the ball. That's the first priority of catching. We got to catch the ball. We've got to be able to block. We've got to be able to throw runners out and help our staff. So that's how I talk to those guys about it. Whenever they're 8, 9, 10, I think if they want to, then we can work on that. But I'm still going to tell them this is a tool that you're going to use. You're probably not going to do this every time. Now, as guys get older, let's say 14, 15, 16 into high school, and their coaches are on board or they want to do it and they express that, hey, I really want to learn this position, that's whenever we would start to move into that. And we'll build up. We'll go basic right knee down, basic left knee down, working into kickstands, working how to block, how to get up and throw out of that position, because I think there's little things that you need to focus on at one time instead of trying to do it all at once.
Now, tell me the other part of this whole strategy, at least from what I'm seeing online now, is the glove movement.
Mm-hmm.
How does this whole thing work in regards to the one knee down or even just the regular stance? What's the whole thing with this glove movement?
Gotcha. So I think that's a good transition from what you just asked me about, when would we talk about one knee versus two knee with athletes coming up out of youth baseball into high school and then college. I think that above everything else, and my key as an instructor, as a player, is the glove action and the glove movement. So what we're seeing now is instead of getting set up, showing a target, working through our pre-pitch where we relax a little bit and then just working back to the ball and sticking it, we're trying to optimize the edges of the zone in a much more efficient way. So you're gonna see a lot more glove movement, but that's because that guy behind the plate really struggles to see where that ball lands in the zone whenever we're working through the ball back into the zone. So whether we are on 2 feet or we're on one knee, my big thing is that that glove has to get below the ball, and then it has to stay below the ball in the middle or the bottom of the zone until we contact that ball, and then we present the baseball. And we do that all in one move. Like one of my key terms is one fluid move. So you don't want to catch the ball and then work up. I think that's where we get into the difference between receiving and framing. And since I was a little kid, everybody's like, frame the ball better, frame the ball better. And I've always thought, well, I'm gonna catch that ball out here and then I'm gonna rip it back into the zone, which I don't like. I didn't do that in college and high school. I was just trying to work my glove through the ball to be able to get that pitch on the edge or to get that pitch on the bottom. So working through it And then playing around with the movement that you have. If you want to just work through that ball and move 2-3 inches or maybe even an inch and we're real subtle with it, that's fine. If you want to move a little bit more aggressively, I know like Victor Caratini had tons of support and tons of people just shaming him on Twitter this year because he was moving the ball a lot, but he was also one of the better receivers while he was doing that. So it's give and take there. I think focusing on that glove movement though, whether we are on 2 feet or whether we're on 1 knee, is key. And we're gonna talk about how we do that as well.
I really want to dive a little bit deeper into the whole glove movement thing. So maybe we can make a video, the next video, on the glove movement. I brought a tool with me. Maybe we could talk about that and what you like about it. And then also, do you have some drills to like work on that stuff?
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
We can get into? So let's do that in the next video. Thanks for sticking with us on this one. Don't forget to check out @KGS Baseball on Instagram, as well as KGSBaseball.com. I hope you guys got a lot out of that video. I learned a ton right there. So hop down in the comment section below. Let us know if you got any questions. We'll be happy to answer them down there. Again, go follow Kyle and subscribe to YouGoProBaseball. Click the bell so you're notified every time the new videos come out. We'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much, man. That was awesome.
Thank you.